She tried to sell her body for bread, the lonely rancher whispered, "I'll feed you forever." She walked into town with dust caked in the hollows of her collarbones and hunger humming where her heart should have been. The sun had just cracked over the horizon, painting the sky the color of dried blood. Her feet were raw, blistered, bare, no shoes left but the memory of them. The dress she wore had once been blue. Now it was gray with dirt, torn at the hem, and smelled of sweat and old tears. In her right hand, she held a single silver button, the last thing left from her brother's coat. He'd pinned it there the day they left home. "For luck," he'd said. She hadn't worn it since the river took him. She didn't beg. Not out loud. She walked straight to the bakery, past the hitching post where 3 dead horses rotted in the sun, past the saloon where men laughed like wolves, past the church whose bell hadn't rung in 7 years. The baker stood behind his counter, flour dusting his forearms like snowfall. He looked up. Saw her. Looked away. She placed the button on the counter. "I'll trade this," she said. "For bread." The man didn't move. Didn't blink. His eyes flickered to the button, then back to her face. He saw the hollows beneath her cheeks. The way her lips cracked when she swallowed. The trembling in her fingers. He saw a child who'd stopped crying because no one ever answered. He reached under the counter. She thought, maybe. He pulled out a whip. Not to strike. Just to hold. Like a warning. "Get out," he said. She didn't cry. Didn't scream. Didn't even flinch. She picked up the button. Walked out. The door slammed behind her. A dog barked. A crow flew off the roof. Somewhere, a wagon wheel groaned as it turned. She kept walking. Past the blacksmith's forge, where smoke curled like a ghost's breath. Past the livery stable, where a mare nickered low, as if mourning something she couldn't name. By noon, the sun burned hot enough to melt lead. Her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. Her vision blurred at the edges. She passed a well. No bucket. No rope. Just dry stone and silence. She sat down beside it. Closed her eyes. Thought of her brother's voice. "Keep going, Lila. Even when you can't see the road." She opened her eyes. Stood. Took one step. Then another. Behind her, a window cracked open. A woman whispered, "Lord have mercy." But no one came. No one ever did. She didn't know that the rancher watched from his porch 2 miles out. Didn't know he'd seen her collapse in the sagebrush yesterday. Didn't know he'd buried his wife under an oak tree with no headstone. Didn't know he'd been waiting, not for salvation, not for peace, but for someone who still knew how to walk when everything inside them had already died. He didn't shout when he saw her. Didn't curse the world. Didn't grab his rifle or call for help. He just stepped off the porch. Slow. Like the earth itself was holding its breath. She lay curled beside his gate, face pressed into the dirt, one arm wrapped around her ribs like she could hold herself together. Her skin was pale as bone. Her hair matted with sweat and grit. One foot twitched. Then still. He knelt. Pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Pulse. Faint. Freddie. He lifted her. No ceremony. No gentleness. Just motion. Muscle. Need. Carried her like he carried sacks of grain, firm, steady, unflinching. Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and dried sage. The fire in the hearth had gone low. He stirred it with a poker, sent sparks dancing against the walls. He filled a tin cup with water from the barrel by the door. Dripped it onto her lips. 1 drop. Then another. Her throat moved. She coughed. Water spilled down her chin. He wiped it with his thumb. Didn't look away. Didn't speak. He pulled a blanket from the bed, coarse wool, stiff with age, and wrapped her tight. Tucked her onto the floor near the fire, where the heat would reach her bones. Then he went to the pantry. Brought back a loaf of rye bread. Dark. Heavy. Crusted. He broke it in half. Set one piece on the table. Left the other on the floor beside her. Sat across from her. Waited. She didn't touch it. He ate his half slowly. Chewed each bite like it might be his last. When he finished, he stood. Went to the sink. Washed his hands. Wiped them on his apron. Looked at her again. Still asleep. Still broken. Still alive. Outside, the wind picked up. It rattled the shutters. Whistled through the eaves. Coyotes began to sing. He didn't move. Didn't close the door. Didn't turn away. He just sat. In the chair. With his hat in his lap. And waited. For her to wake. For her to eat. For her to choose to live. He didn't believe in miracles. But he believed in hunger. And hunger, sometimes, was louder than God. 3 days passed without a word. She woke before dawn. Moved like a shadow. Washed his clothes in the creek, scrubbing each garment with cold water and rough hands until the stains bled out. She hung them on the line with careful knots, like she was tying prayers to the wind. He watched from the window. Saw how she didn't shiver, even when frost bit her ankles. Saw how she never looked back at the house. Saw how she washed her own face in the same basin he used. Each morning, she ate the bread he left on the table. Always the same amount. Never more. Never less. At night, she slept on the floor near the stove. He slept in the bedroom. Sometimes, in the dark, he heard her breathe. Shallow. Like she was afraid to take too much air. He dreamed of his wife. Every night. She stood at the foot of the bed, wearing her Sunday bonnet, smiling like she always did before the fever stole her voice. "You're still here," the dream she said. "I'm still here," he answered. Why? He never woke up with an answer. He only knew this: she didn't ask for anything. Didn't thank him. Didn't curse him. Didn't try to leave. She just existed. Like a wound that refused to heal. On the third night, he brought in a log from the pile outside. Tossed it on the fire. Watched the flames leap. Then he went to the mantel. Lifted the photograph. His wife's face stared back, bright-eyed, soft-lipped, full of laughter he'd forgotten how to make. He set it down. Turned. And saw her standing in the doorway. Watching him. Not scared. Not angry. Just present. He didn't speak. She didn't either. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind hummed through the grass. And for the first time, he didn't feel alone. He felt guilty. Because he knew. She wasn't safe here. Not really. She was just waiting. For the next storm. Or the next man. Or the next reason to disappear. He closed his eyes. Let the silence stretch. And prayed. Not for redemption. Not for grace. Just for her to stay. Just long enough to remember what warmth felt like. The fourth morning came thin and brittle. Cold air clung to the windows. Frost-painted lace on the glass. She sat at the table. Eating. Slowly. Like each bite mattered. He was mending a saddle strap when she spoke. "I had a brother." He froze. The needle slipped. Pierced his thumb. Blood welled. Dark. Thick. He didn't pull it out. Didn't wipe it. Just stared at her. She didn't look up. Kept chewing. Her voice was flat. Like stones dragged through mud. He was 12. I was 9. She paused. Swallowed. The river rose fast. We were crossing near the mill. He pushed me onto the bank. Got swept under. Her fingers tightened around the bread. I screamed. She stopped. The room held its breath. The kettle whistled. He finally moved. Reached for the pot. Poured her another cup of tea. Set it beside her plate. Didn't say I'm sorry. Didn't say it wasn't your fault. Didn't say you're safe now. He just nodded. Once. Slow. As if he understood every word she hadn't spoken. She looked at him then. For the first time. Really looked. At the deep lines around his eyes. At the scar running from temple to jaw. At the way his hands shook when he thought no one was watching. She didn't smile. Didn't cry. Just picked up the cup. Drank. And said nothing else. He went back to his work. But his fingers didn't shake anymore. And when he glanced at her again, she was looking at the photograph on the mantel. And for the first time, she didn't look away. Thunder rolled like cannon fire across the prairie. Rain came sideways. Slammed into the roof like fists. The lantern flickered. The chimney smoked. She woke to cold water dripping on her cheek. He was kneeling beside her. Holding a rag to her forehead. His touch was gentle. Too gentle. She didn't pull away. Didn't speak. Just watched him. Lightning flashed. For one blinding second, she saw his face. Not the grizzled rancher. Not the silent man. But the boy who'd lost everything. His eyes were wet. Not from rain. From grief. He whispered, "I'm sorry." She didn't ask what for. She knew. He was sorry he hadn't saved his wife. Sorry he hadn't saved his daughter. Sorry he'd let himself become a ghost. Outside, the wind screamed. The barn groaned. Something fell. He didn't move. Just kept pressing the rag to her skin. "You're not alone," he said. It wasn't a promise. It was a plea. She closed her eyes. Felt his thumb brush her brow. Felt the tremble in his chest. Felt the weight of all the things he'd buried. And for the first time, she didn't feel afraid. She felt known. When the storm passed, the world was drenched. The fire had drowned. But they sat together on the floor. No words. Just breathing. Two hearts, slow and steady. Beating in the dark. She found it while sweeping under the hearth. A loose board. A gap. A small wooden box. Inside, a photo. A little girl. Yellow dress. Smiling. Hair tied with ribbons. Written on the back, in shaky ink, "My Lily. Age 7. Taken the day the fever came." She didn't cry. Didn't gasp. Didn't tell him. She slipped it back. Closed the board. Cleaned the dust away. That night, she made bread. Not the hard rye he gave her. Something softer. Sweetened with honey he kept hidden in a jar behind the flour. She baked it slow. Let it rise. Let it burn just a little on the edges. When it cooled, she left it on his pillow. Next to his boots. He found it in the morning. Stared. Breathed. Touched the crust. Then pressed it to his chest. And wept. No sound. Just tears. Hot. Quiet. Like rain falling on dry ground. Outside, a hawk circled. High. Alone. He didn't go outside. Didn't fix the fence. Didn't check the herd. He sat. With the bread. And remembered. His daughter's laugh. Her tiny hands pulling his mustache. Her whisper, "Papa, will you hug me forever?" He hadn't hugged her when she was sick. Too busy. Too proud. Too afraid. Now, he kissed the bread. And whispered, "I'm trying." She didn't hear him. But the wind carried it. And maybe, just maybe, it reached her. He was fixing the west fence. Hammer in hand. Nails bent. Sun high. She walked up behind him. No footsteps. Just presence. He didn't turn. Didn't need to. He knew. She stood there. Silent. Long minutes passed. The wind tugged at her hair. At his shirt. At the frayed ends of his life. Then she spoke. "I won't leave." He didn't stop hammering. Didn't pause. Didn't look at her. Just drove the next nail into the post. Hard. Deep. The wood split. He didn't flinch. He just kept working. Until the fence was whole. Until his hands bled. Until the sun dipped low. Only then did he turn. Looked at her. Really looked. For the first time. Not as a burden. Not as a ghost. But as a person. She met his gaze. No fear. No hope. Just truth. And in that moment, neither of them needed words. The wind carried the scent of crushed sage. A horse snorted in the distance. Somewhere, a train whistle blew. He turned back to the fence. And hammered one last nail. Soft. Careful. As if sealing a vow. The letter arrived on a Thursday. Postmarked San Francisco. Stamped with a red seal. She found it on the kitchen table. No name. Just her initials, LM. Her hands shook. She didn't open it. Not yet. She sat. Stared. At the ink. At the fold. At the weight of it. He was out with the cattle. She waited. Until dusk. Then she read it. "Dear Lila, I've searched for you since the flood. Found your trail through the towns. You're not alone anymore. I can give you a proper life. Warm rooms. Silk dresses. A husband who'll care for you. Come to the depot. Train leaves Friday at noon. Bring nothing but yourself. Uncle Elias." She folded it. Slow. Smooth. Tucked it into her boot. That night, she didn't sleep. Sat by the fire. Staring at the embers. He came in. Saw her. Didn't ask. Just poured tea. Set it beside her. Saturday. Watched. The clock ticked. The wind sighed. And somewhere, far away, a train whistled. She didn't cry. Didn't speak. Just took a sip. And whispered, "I'm tired." He didn't answer. He just reached out. And brushed her hair from her face. Like a father. Like a friend. Like a man who loved her without saying it. And for the first time, she believed him. Dawn came gray. Thin. Like a prayer half-spoken. She packed nothing. Wore the same dress. Boots laced tight. She stood in the doorway. Looking back. At the table. The stove. The photograph. The empty chair. He wasn't there. Out checking the herd. She left the letter on the table. Beside it, the clay cup. Small. Rough. Unfinished. She carved it the night before. Used a knife from his tool kit. Made it wide enough to hold warmth. She didn't write a note. Didn't say goodbye. Just turned. Walked out. The gate creaked. The wind followed her. She didn't look back. Didn't cry. Didn't run. Just walked. Down the road. Toward the train. Toward safety. Toward silence. He returned 2 hours later. Found the letter. Found the cup. Held it in both hands. Felt the ridges of her fingers. The uneven rim. The love in its imperfection. He walked to the edge of the property. Looked east. The road stretched. Empty. No dust. No figure. No sign. He knelt. Set the cup on the ground. Whispered, "I'll feed you forever." The wind took it. Carried it away. And for the first time, he didn't feel alone. He felt holy. Years passed. The ranch stayed. But the land grew tired. The barn sagged. The well ran dry. The horses sold. The fences fell. Neighbors came. Asked about her. Said she was dead. Said she'd married rich. Said she'd vanished into the desert. Some said she was cursed. Others said she was sacred. Every morning, without fail, a loaf of bread appeared on the windowsill. Wrapped in cloth. Warm. Still steaming. No fingerprints. No footprints. No note. Just bread. And silence. One winter, a traveler came. Old man. Cane. Face lined like cracked earth. He sat on the porch. Stared at the east. Asked the neighbor, "Is he still here?" The neighbor nodded. Still sits out there. Every day. Looks at the road. The traveler smiled. Went inside. Found the old man. Wrapped in blankets. Eyes closed. Breathing shallow. The traveler knelt. Took his hand. Did she come? The old man opened his eyes. Weak. Bright. Smiled. She comes, he whispered. Every day. He raised his hand. Pointed to the windowsill. There, fresh. Still warm. A loaf of bread. He breathed his last. Smiling. They buried him under the oak tree. No headstone. Just a rock. And a cup. Clay. Cracked. Filled with wildflowers. Every morning after, the bread still appears. No one knows who brings it. No one dares take it. They say if you eat it, you'll never be hungry again. They say if you listen close, on quiet nights, you can hear two voices. One, a man. One, a girl. Whispering. Together. I'll feed you forever. And the wind, always answers.